It is of course July 2019, and for Doctor Who audio drama fans that can of course only mean one thing. It is the 20th anniversary of Big Finish, and in today's review I'm in fact going to be celebrating in style as I'm taking a look at a rather exciting Doctor Who Big Finish box set release that has only just came out, and it is of course the further adventures of Lucie Miller, starring Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, alongside the one and only Big Finish royalty, that is Sheridan Smith as Lucie Bleedin Miller. Now, due to the celebratory manner of this review, I was in fact going to purchase like party hats and confetti and those weird party poppery things. However, due to me being a Big Finish fan, and of course all of my money does eventually end up being spent on Big Finish, that does of course also mean the time completely skint. So you're just going to need to imagine the lovely confetti and party related things, because hey, money not spent on Big Finish is money not well spent. There you go, Big Finish, that can be a new slogan for you. So before I even delve into the contents of the further adventures of Lucie Miller box set, I have a little bit of a Big Finish confession to make, because it's something that I bring up in conversation with other Big Finish fans, and quite frankly, the looks on their faces often drain from emotion in absolute terror and shock, because I, up until listening to this box set, have never experienced, listened to, or bought any 8th Doctor or Lucie Miller adventures from either or any of their 4 series that were released between 2007 and 2011, and for that I apologise to the Big Finish community. It's something that I've wanted to do for quite a while. However, due to the sheer amount of Big Finish releases that come out on a monthly basis, I've not had nor the time or the money to actually go back and experience those releases. And now I have listened to the further adventures of Lucie Miller, let me tell you, I'm definitely going to be going back and in fact purchasing more Lucie 8th Doctor adventures, because this box set was a sheer joy to experience. However, that does mean that this review is going to be coming from a rather different and unusual perspective, because I'm going to be approaching this box set as that of a new listener to Lucie Miller's adventures with the 8th Doctor, as opposed to possibly other reviews of other Big Finish fans who have experienced all, or at least some, of the 8th Doctor and Lucie Miller adventures in the past. So I'm approaching this from a fresh perspective and seeing if this box set is in fact a good opportunity to jump on, very much like I did. And a bit of a clue for you, go on buy it. It's the best jumping on point ever. It's really, really good. So first off, and as always, in the description below there will of course be a link to the Big Finish website where you can take a look at all the details for this release. The physical box set is currently at the pre-order price of $24.99 and the download is $19.99. However, after the end of August 2019 it will be going up to the general sale price, where it will be also available from other retailers. I do believe that the recommended retail would be around £30 to £40. So if you like what I say throughout this review, or if you have collected the previous Lucie Miller and 8th Doctor adventures, I certainly recommend purchasing it before it goes up in price in order to save a little bit of your valuable money. Now all of that is out of the way, taking a look at the technical details for this box set. The rather lovely cover art was created by Will Brooks, the director is Nicholas Briggs, the executive producers are Nicholas Briggs and Jason Haigh-Ellery, the producer is Scott Handcock, the script editor is Alan Barnes, the music has been created by Jamie Robertson with additional sound design by Ian Meadows, the writers for this box set are Nicholas Briggs, Alice Cavender, Eddie Robson and Alan Barnes. And that is how you go through credits. Bloody hell, that is in fact the best in the probably 9 years of this channel that I've gone through the production credit. I'm so proud of that. I'm too proud. That's how sad I am. That was really good. Well done, me. I didn't miss out anyone, did I? Yes! I'm happy now. Well, here we go, my first ever experience of Lucie Bleedin Miller's adventures with the 8th Doctor, starting with the Dalek Trap, written by none other than Nicholas Briggs. This tale puts Lucie at the forefront of the story, which makes complete sense given that the majority of the audience is in fact listening for her. The TARDIS, along with various other ships, including one led by Yaz and Jick, fall into the depths of a black hole. With the Doctor behaving unusually, it's up to Lucie to figure out what's going on, why aren't the Daleks being their usual deadly selves, and most importantly, get the Doctor back alive. Making Sheridan Smith the main focus of the story is perfect for new listeners like me, giving a detailed look into her personality and very quickly establishing herself in the minds of the new listener, almost like meeting a person for the first time, yet feeling like you've also knew them forever. With Lucie using a recording device as her personal diary, within the first few minutes it establishes a brief overview of what has happened on her adventures so far within the TARDIS, placing this story after the events of Human Resources, the Series 1 finale. The narrative itself is easygoing and pleasant, which is a nice change from the other 8th Doctor box sets, often containing extremely layered plots with lots of backstory context required. I think that my main concern when I first went into Dalek Trap, or at least when I first read the synopsis of Dalek Trap, was that it was going to be a rather basic classic Doctor Who story featuring the Daleks, because let's face it, the actual title itself doesn't particularly sound too special. It sounds like a very basic Dalek story where you have the Doctor, you have the Daleks have set a trap, the Doctor falls into the trap, and the bulk of the runtime is going to be spent with the Doctor getting out of said trap. And I think that this story certainly pulls the rug of illusion from underneath you, and you are kind of reminded that you're listening to a Big Finish release and all is not what it seems, and this story is in fact a rather unusual and experimental one, but also uses the advantage of this of being a jumping on point and being the first episode of the box set, because you see the 8th Doctor almost being in a paralysed state where he is just a zombie, he has very little character, and it is up to Lucie to figure out what is going on, and that provides a perfect opportunity for Lucie to be the main character of this set. So introduced to Lucie Miller in a more direct way, allowing you to go into more detail about the personality of her character, but also seeing how her character copes under stress as well, and in situations that can be a little bit difficult. The story, in a rather unusual sense, kind of doesn't feel like a Dalek story, because you have this rather unusual ominous power known as the Darkness the Daleks have also fell into the trap of, and basically the Doctor needs to try and get out of the situation with mostly the help of Lucie in there as well. Lucie does also have some really lovely moments with the Daleks. There is this great moment where she says who she is, and I'm not even going to say what comes up after in fact, but it's a good moment and worth buying this whole box set pretty much just for that scene. But I think it's nice to have an episode with the Daleks where the companion has a past relationship with the Daleks. Of course, the first story of the 8th Doctor and Lucie Adventures was a Dalek episode, so it's nice that they've almost played to that and played to what Lucie knows as the Daleks, and then introducing characters known as Raz and Jake, who basically believe the Daleks to be these nice people and a great species, and they just want help and all of that. However, it turns out there is the possibility of mind control and things going wrong throughout the actual story that kind of suspends your belief as to who is telling the truth and why certain characters are saying what they are saying. Of course, having a black hole within the actual story itself does also raise a few rather nice scientific questions in there. I'm not necessarily big on physics or science as a whole, however it's nice using the concept of black holes because they are a very intriguing thing that we don't really know too much about, and the idea that once you are in the black hole you are crushed into basically non-existence, and this story obviously doesn't do that, but it plays with some more interesting ideas instead, such as playing with the idea of time and things changing, people forgetting who they even are, why they are even where they are. I think out of all of the 4 episodes in this set, this is certainly the more scientific science fiction episode, as the others are a little bit more laid back in that approach, but this one is certainly the more traditional 8th Doctor Who that I'm used to. Sheridan Smith as Lucie to basically absolutely steal the show and be a really lovely character, incredibly lovable, but also at the same time Sheridan's performance is completely packed with emotion and expression, which makes you instantly sort of fall in love with her. I must admit, I think she's brilliant throughout this story, and I'm really looking forward to see that dynamic progress within the later stories. The Revolution game, written by Alice Cavender, sees a more traditional Doctor Who story in a similar sense to that of the new series format, having an alien world with big personalities whilst a corporate business rules over the human colony. I've often seen the older 8th Doctor and Lucie Miller adventures being referred to as the Big Finish equivalent of new series Doctor Who, however done in a more effective manner, and I think that this episode captures that well. The interplanetary retro roller derby has an underlying darker past held with its sponsors HeliaCorp, with the roller skaters competing for life passes to help the colony members affected by poverty to seek a better life. I love this aspect of the episode, creating this sense of vulnerability, and it would have been great to see this delved into further. However, this episode decides to focus on the real inhabitants of the planet Castus Sigma, and their plans to make the world their own once more. Having the Doctor and Lucie back together this episode without the Doctor being hypnotised gives the opportunity to see this Doctor-companion dynamic in a more natural adventure scenario, with lots of laughs and jokes and a great sense of warmth within their relationship. It's safe to say that this episode is a lot more action-packed and hands-on compared to that of the Dalek Trap, dealing with the concepts of morality between the species and the powers of media coverage. I think that Alice Cavender has done an incredibly good job of building a planet that is a human colony, however making it feel very realistic at the same time. And to an extent, I could certainly imagine this story actually being a part of new series Doctor Who, simply because of the ideas that this story presents. You have almost an exaggerated sense of what human life is today. It's a large arena, it's being broadcast live, and there is a corporate business running over everything that is a little bit shady, and of course throughout the actual story you learn different things and different possible conspiracies that kind of overpowers the corporate business underneath, and the Doctor is in fact going up against this whole corporate giant in a way. It's kind of like in an earthly way the Doctor going up against like M&S or Tesco, however it doesn't sound as exciting when I put it like that, I must admit. The Revolution game does certainly throw up some very interesting ideas, such as the arena and HeliaCorp having this sporting event that is basically competing for life passes in order to get people out of the slums of poverty and narrate them up to this more positive and well-off life of wealth and money and happiness. And I think that that part of the story is something of which that is very intriguing, and that was the opportunity to in fact make a very dark episode. However, this story kind of takes a more light-hearted tone. I think as an improvement it would have been nice to see a few extra scenes going over that, because I think it was kind of brushed over. But as for a light-hearted story, I love the idea of the roller skating in the actual episode itself. I love how involved Lucie actually gets once you physically have Lucie delving into the plot, actually being a part of the roller skating derby. Of course, using that and the dynamic once again made me really fall in love with this TARDIS team, certainly more than the previous story, because both characters were more disconnected. The episode brings them both together and offers a really fun, fast-paced episode, and to be honest, with a few edits and adjustments, I actually think that this story wouldn't look out of place within a 10th Doctor Adventures volume of new series Big Finish Adventures, because everything about this episode is very new series, and if you are a new listener it will be very easy to follow as well. As for the actual aliens themselves, I'm not going to mention too much because I think that this plot in the actual episode does throw up a lot of curveballs within the actual narrative, where you think you're going in one direction, however it kind of twists it into another one that you weren't expecting. So I really do praise Alice Cavender's way of actually making the episode feel a little bit unpredictable. So I'm not going to mention too much about them, but we do have a character called Spartacus. I just needed to check, but he's played by Tom Alexander. He does a very good job. Once again, really nicely captures this bug-like insect race that lives on this planet, a very believable style alien that once again wouldn't actually seem out of place within new series TV Doctor Who. The House on the Edge of Chaos, written by Eddie Robson, sees the Doctor and Lucie arrive in a house like no other, built as a settlement on a planet where nothing else other than the mysterious static surrounds. And no, this is not the static from the 6th Doctor and Unit stories that decides to harbour dead bodies. This time round it is in fact literal static. The Horton family are seen as the superiors within the household, ensuring that they keep order between the servants below, a hierarchy however on a much larger scale. In fact, this episode is quite similar to that of Downton Abbey, however plummeted into the depths of space. In particular, Rupert Vansittart playing Darius Horton that really helped to present the obsession with order and structure that the family possessed, but also with the element of mystery tied into the role. Eddie Robson's style of writing is perfectly suited to the 1 hour story format, as he uses each and every minute in such a precise and important manner. Also worth crediting is Paul McGann himself as the 8th Doctor. So far this box set has seen quite a large focus on Lucie as the companion, which I am all for. However, this story sees McGann taking control and trying to solve the mystery through a series of great scenes. I really love that McGann in this box set has a sense of an Edwardian gentleman, but also at the same time with a sprinkling of sass and humour. It has really made me realise that the 8th Doctor that I have got used to throughout listening to Doom Coalition, Ravenous and the Time War is in fact a version of the 8th Doctor that has been on quite a tough journey. He's more tired and depressed and darker, yet this current version of the 8th Doctor is yet to experience all of that and has a twinkle of energy and happiness that over time is eventually lost. And in fact that makes me genuinely feel quite sad for this incarnation of the Doctor. Seeing him progress from this really happy incarnation into something of which by the very end that is quite miserable and depressed. What I really love about Eddie Robson's way of writing is that he has basically got this rather dull location of the house known as Horton's Orb that is run by the Horton family, that is basically this standard period dressing house where you have a hierarchy, you have these people living on the top floors that are living in peace and tranquility, and then you have the servants on the underfloors that are doing all of the menial tasks and the jobs and the cooking and the cleaning, and even these jobs that do not need people employed to do those jobs simply because the people above want to basically get away with doing nothing. He's got that rather dull setting and then plummeted it into a location that is anything but that. I find it very odd that one of the main ways that I can describe the house on the edge of chaos for an audio drama is it's very visual. I find this episode intriguing in a way because you have this house that looks normal and it could very easily just be, if it was a TV story, a house location. However, as soon as you look beyond the windows, it is just complete static, and I think that's so odd and brilliant, and certainly I would love to know how Eddie Robson actually came up with that idea. And of course Horton's Orb itself is essentially a microcosm. You have these people living as a family unit. Actually, when you've got people living together for a very long period of time, almost in a very small colony, you are going to have tensions grow, you are going to have this idea of corruption, and you're going to have things that are going to be uncovered once you get a little bit of digging involved, certainly when the Doctor arrives and starts to uncover certain aspects of the history of Horton's Orb. Lucie in this story does take a little bit more of a traditional companion role. However, I like the fact that so far in this series we've seen Lucie taking control, Lucie getting involved hands-on within the actual story, and now you've got Lucie on a more emotional side. You have her dealing with the more smaller characters throughout this piece on an emotional level. You have her dealing with the different people, getting to know them, making these different people actually feel like a real personality. And I think especially when you've got Sheridan Smith within the actual story, she does a very good job of that. I think that her quirky one-liners, I think the way that she naturally oozes into the situation is brilliant, especially when balanced with a character such as the 8th Doctor that sees once again a more traditional side to his Doctor within this episode, a much more upbeat character that is very charismatic but also at the same time has an emotional side very much like Lucie. And I think that if anything throughout these stories I've realised how much it and Lucie in this early life are kind of made for each other. Both of them are incredibly excitable, both of them have this craving for adventure, and of course both of them connect with people in a really nice way. Of course throughout all of the episodes the 8th Doctor makes different friends, almost making temporary companions for each individual story, and then of course by the very end you have them both coming back together after going on their separate ways, learning different things and then defeating the situation together. It feels like a group effort, and I think that Eddie Robson does a very good job of writing them both, especially that dynamic between them. Much like the previous episode, this story does have a sense of unpredictability and feels like a new series episode. I think there's an element about it that feels incredibly over the top and pantomime in some moments. I think that maybe it could be a bit too over the top in some parts, however thoroughly enjoyable nevertheless, and I think that if you're somebody who is looking for, once again, a jumping on point with Big Finish, this episode is another really fun, easy listen, and it also doesn't necessarily lose you within the narrative. It's not really too complex. If you put your mind to it, you will understand it. The fourth and final episode of the further adventures of Lucie Miller is The Island of the Fenn, written by Alan Barnes. In a sense, this episode does feel like a new series finale, having the return of a classic monster. By this point in the box set, the relationship between the Doctor and Lucie Miller has been well and truly established. Lucie has some great moments alone in the early half, seeking help from the nearby village, showing that not only is she independent and has the capability to solve problems alone, but also illustrating how much that she cares for the Doctor. McGann is also brilliant in his usual high-spirited self, and the final act allows him to experiment with his performance as the Doctor. Alan Barnes' dedication to the show's history, and in particular the image of the Fenn storyline from the 4th Doctor era, sets up this episode with many references to the original Fenn appearance. But not only does this episode act as a sequel to the original serial, but it develops further and generates new ideas, something that can be lost when old monsters return in Doctor Who. The opening half does see the foundation of a form of cult, as well as the development of the location of the island itself, and at first I did feel that this was slightly slow, but once these foundations are put into place, it makes for a very strong and satisfying way to end the box set, certainly within the latter half of the episode. I think that as Doctor Who series finales go, quite a lot of writers could learn from the technique that is used within this actual story, because Island of the Fenn is an episode within its own right. It has its own characters, it has its unique location, and it has its own unique story. However, unlike new series finales, sometimes it can simply be dedicated to filling up those loose ends. That is certainly seen within the Moffat era of Doctor Who. I feel like it's often more focused around tying up those loose ends as opposed to the quality of the actual episode and script as a whole. What I really like about this story is that it has the Fenn plotline of the actual Fenn on this island that is rather remote, and then just when you think it is coming to the end, you almost have this extension of the episode that then tries to link in the rest of the series and kind of sum it up as a series in its own right. I really love that. Almost like all of the episodes are fine how they are as their own individual products. However, this story goes that extra mile to almost tie up those loose ends, but also tie a little bit of a nice bow on the parcel as well, and make a really nice satisfying ending to the series as a whole. I think that once again, if I was to criticise this story, of course as it is the Island of the Fenn, I would have loved to see the Fenn a little bit more, because we don't really see it. I was in fact realising this when coming back from Newcastle on the train, because I've now moved back home for the summer full time, because I was listening to the story for a second time, which is a rarity. I normally only listen to the box set once and review it. This one I've actually listened to twice on a loop, because I loved it that much, and I actually realised that considering it's a story based around the Fenn, it is a lot more focused on the idea of possession and the cult behind it and the interesting ideas of that cult, as opposed to the monster itself. And I suppose that can work to a strength. I think it works to a strength within this story. But me being a Doctor Who fan that likes a good monster here and there, I think it would have been nice to see a few additional scenes with the actual Fenn or Fenn creature facing up against the Doctor, because it kind of felt like it was missing something due to that, and maybe it would have been nice to take away just a little bit from the possession stuff and kind of delve into the bog-eyed monster, worm creature slug a bit more, because let's face it, who doesn't love that costume? It's ridiculous, but I love it for that. I feel like this episode is a very good example of Big Finish going the extra mile, because you do have the idea of the island plot and this very small cult that is growing simply because of their belief in the Fenn, and then it kind of goes to the extra length to reference the original story, the image of the Fenn, and Alan Barnes' actual understanding of that episode is incredible. It's absolutely brilliant. You can tell that he is a devoted fan. He's not just a writer that's been drafted in to do this Doctor Who story. You can generally see that there has been a passion and dedication put into this script to make it as enjoyable but also loyal to the original story as much as possible. So I really do commend Alan for that, because I did enjoy this story for what it did. And yeah, as I say, a great way to actually wrap up the story. And Lucie as well. Lucie and 8, once again, that dynamic, some more brilliant examples between the different scenes of them bouncing off each other, but also some brilliant examples of them once again going off on their own separate journeys, meeting different people, Lucie having some brilliant and amazing one-liners, and 8 equally just being his lovely gentlemanly self. So yeah, a thoroughly enjoyable episode and a great way to wrap up the box set. And with that, that brings to a close another Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review of the further adventures of Lucie Miller, of course released as a part of Big Finish's 20th anniversary celebratory month. And what a brilliant release to in fact bring out for 20 years. I think that this is pretty much a love letter to fans of the 8th Doctor and Lucie era, and as I said at the very start of this review, I will certainly be going back to take a look at some of her previous stories over the past few years from series 1 to 4, because now I've seen this Doctor companion dynamic, I just want more of it, because quite frankly it can only go up from here. Normally the sequels aren't as good, which is what I was really worried about with this box set. I was worried that Big Finish were going to get a bit over ahead of themselves and release something just for the sake of it, because the previous 8th Doctor and Lucie Miller adventures, especially the first season that was released, have almost been put on their own godly tier of Big Finish audio drama, and I was worried that Big Finish weren't able to live up to that and they were just going to release this product, as I say, for the sake of it. However, I think if anything this box set has proved that they can go back to their original roots. They can release some more stories within a much loved era of the 8th Doctor, and I just hope that, who knows, maybe we will see a little bit more of Sheridan Smith as Lucie Bleedin Miller in the future. So thank you very much for watching this review of the further adventures of Lucie Miller Volume 1. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have any questions about this box set, please do leave them in the comment section below, and I will of course reply to them at some point in the near future. And if you have listened to this box set yourself, what did you like about this release? Why not leave your mini reviews in the comment section below as well? However, please do leave them kind of spoiler free for those people that haven't listened to the box set as of yet, so they can then go on to enjoy it as well without having some points of the narrative spoiled. So as always, stay tuned for more Doctor Who content every single week on the Host Productions, and of course I will see you all next week for another Doctor Who video. So thank you for watching, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.